Welcome back. We're going to continue now with our January 21st, 2020 Select Board meeting. The next item on the agenda are the announcements. All right. The Recreation Department will be holding a skate and s'more event on February 8th from 1 to 4 at Mill Villages Park. There will be cocoa, s'mores, and a popcorn bar, music, a fire pit, and more. Bring your skates and come by for some outdoor winter fun. The Recreation Department is also offering a mini hoops basketball program for children currently in kindergarten and those entering in the fall. It's designed to get them introduced to the sport. The program will be held on Saturdays from February 8th through March 21st at the Grafton Municipal Center Gym. There are 2 class times, 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. The cost is $95. You can register at graftonrec.com until January 26th. Appletree Arts will be holding a faculty showcase on Saturday, January 25th at 7:30 p.m. at 1 Grafton Common. It's being hosted by Claflin Hill Symphony Orchestra, Homefield Credit Union, and Appletree Arts. Tickets are $18 and will feature all genres from Baroque to classical to modern to Broadway. Those are our announcements. Next on the agenda is public comments. Is there anybody here from the public for public comments? All right. Having none. First thing on the schedule is the Shop Grafton drawing. We are going to pass over that. Doreen, did you want to just say a couple words?
Sure. Yeah, so EDC is probably going to be taking a different direction of how we distribute the raffle drawings. So John Allen, our Economic Development Coordinator, couldn't make the meeting tonight, so we want him present to give an update on Shop Grafton and how it went, as well as provide a forum where we can do all the raffles at once. At first, we're going to do them over several weeks, and that has changed. So I'll have a different update, or more of an update at the next Select Board meeting, or probably before that, on how we'll handle that Shop Grafton and get an update. So thank you.
Great. Next, we have our public hearing for the poll position. So, Peter.
Yes, Madam Chair. Did you want me to read the legal notice first, or put
Yes.
a motion to go into?
Yeah.
Okay. Legal notice rescheduled. This is a poll hearing rescheduled from December 17, 2019. The Select Board will hold a public hearing on the request of National Grid to locate poles, wires, fixtures, including necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures across the following public way. Westboro Road. Install one single operator pole on Westboro Road beginning at a point approximately 3,300 feet northeast of the center line of the intersections of Waterville Street and continuing approximately 20 feet in a northern direction. National Grid to install a 35C2 stub pole to support a P51, which previously had a tree guy that failed, and to lay and maintain underground lateral cables and wires in the above or intersecting public ways for the purposes of making connections with such poles and buildings as such of said petitioners may desire for distributing purposes. The public hearing will take place in Conference Room A, Grafton Municipal Center, 30 Providence Road, Grafton, Mass. On Tuesday, January 21st, 2020. Select Board meeting begins at 6:30 p.m. The purpose of this hearing is to provide an opportunity for public comment. Anyone wishing to may attend Grafton Select Board. Madam Chair, I move the board a vote to open the public hearing for the Westboro Road and Waterville Street poll petition for National Grid.
Second. I have a motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor to open the public hearing?
Aye.
All right, the public hearing is now open. We have a representative from National Grid. Hi. So this one's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, so this is just a request to install a pole to support an existing pole that's currently there at 131 Westboro Road. It has a failed guy wire and it's leaning, so this will Just keep that pole up, right?
Yeah, it was brought to my attention by a overhead supervisor that the current guy wire, the tree had fallen over, I guess, that was there in one of the storms in October and November. So we don't use tree guys anymore because they do, eventually kill trees. So now we install a supporting pole opposite of the pole we're trying to support. So that's what this one entails. So we're trying to support the pole line that's currently there.
Any questions? Are there any questions from the public? All right, motion to close the public hearing?
Madam Chair, I move the board vote to close the public hearing for the Westboro Road and Waterville Street pole petition.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Right, the public hearing is now closed, so, can I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move the board vote to approve the poll petition as presented for Westboro Road.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, Peter, will you read the second public hearing?
Yes.
Notice.
Next up. Bear with me here for one moment. Thank you. Legal notice. Select Board will hold a public hearing on the request of National Grid to locate poles, wires, fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along across the following public way. Westboro Road. Install one joint operated pole on Westboro Road beginning at a point approximately 1,005 feet northeast of the center line of the intersection of Shrewsbury Street and continuing approximately 20 feet in a southern direction. Customer at 112 North Main Street has requested that pole 8-1 be removed from his property where it no longer serves him. Pole 8-1 is a support structure for pole 8. Without pole 8-1, we need to find a new way to support pole 8. Supporting pole 8 is not possible in its current location. Moving it approximately 20 feet southwest allows for proper guide and support, and to lay and maintain underground laterals, cables, and wires in the above or intersecting public ways for the purpose of making connections with such poles and buildings as each said petitioners may desire for distributing purposes. The public hearing will take place in Conference Room A, Grafton Municipal Center, 30 Providence Road, Grafton, Mass, on Tuesday, January 21st, 2020. The Select Board meeting begins at 6:30 p.m. The purpose of this hearing is to provide an opportunity for public comment. Anyone wishing to may attend Grafton Select Board. Madam Chair, I move the board vote to open the public hearing for the Westboro Road poll petition for National Grid.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, the public hearing is open. Is there anything you would like to add?
No,
Does
I
anybody-
described it pretty good in what I wrote. We have a customer that's looking to have a pole that's on his property removed. It no longer serves him. It's in his way for plowing purposes and things to that effect. So he approached me to see if it could be removed. Unfortunately, it does support another pole, which is going to cause me to have to move that pole because of the grade of the road next to that pole that it is supporting. The grade falls off steeply right next to it. There's no way to support it. So that's why we chose to move the pole. Like I said, about 20 feet where we can properly guide it.
Any questions? Questions? Is there anybody here from the public that has a question or would like to comment on the public hearing? All right, do I have a motion to close the
I
public
move the
hearing?
board vote to close the public hearing for Westboro Road poll petition.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The public hearing is now closed. Can I have a motion?
I move the board vote to approve the poll petition as presented for Westboro Road.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion
Thank
is
you.
carried. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
All right, next on the agenda, we have a one-day beer and wine license for Apple Tree Arts. Is there anybody here from Apple Tree Arts to talk about this? That's okay. It sounds like it's their January 25th event that I just read in the announcements.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Carlson?
I move the board vote to grant Apple Tree Arts a one-day beer and wine license for the faculty showcase being held on January 25th, 2020 at 7:30 p.m. at 1 Grafton Common.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, opposed, motion has carried. Next, next one, this is for Tufts. They have several I'll take them all at once, or you can do them one at a time, whichever
Is there
you
anyone?
prefer. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, hi. Come on up.
So yes, we have 4 applications. First one is this next week on the 28th of January. That is our AAP, which is American Association of Equine Practitioners. It's a talk and a reception for students, faculty, and staff. The next one is on February 21st. That is our Student Spanish Club Salsa Night. Then we have on May 2nd, our Veterinary Olympics, also an event, a field day kind of event for faculty, staff, and students. And then the last one we're asking for is on June 25th, and that is our veterinary resident and intern graduations reception. Per our policies, we always have a police detail officer as well as a tip certified bartender at all of our events involving alcohol.
Any questions?
Madam Chair, I move the board vote to grant a one-day beer and wine license to Tufts Veterinary School for the following dates for the following events. January 28, 2020 for the AAEP Seminar and Reception, February 21st, 2020 for the Salsa Night sponsored by Student Spanish Club. Sounds fun. May 2nd, 2020 for Veterinary Olympics, and June 25th, 2020 for the Tufts Veterinarian Resident and Intern graduation.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Thanks for
Thank
coming
Thank
in.
you.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda, we have some resignations.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Carlson?
I move the board vote to accept the resignations of Elizabeth McDonald and Carl Parisi from the Board of Registrar Voters.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I just add, we always send a letter of thanks, so if we can.
Yeah, I'm
add
sorry.
that.
That
That's
usually
okay.
I read that. Sorry.
That's okay. Add that to the motion if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Great. Appointments. So we have 2 appointments for the Zoning Board of Appeals, correct? There's 2 associate positions, is that right, Becca?
Yes.
Yeah, and we have 2 candidates. So, I see one of the candidates is in the audience. Is Carl in the audience as well? No? Would you like to say anything, or do you just want us to continue? Okay. All right, so next on the agenda, ZBA appointments. I will take a motion if you guys have one.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move the board vote to appoint Sitharaman, did I say it? Sitharaman? Sitharaman Ganasan as an alternate member of the Zoning Board of Appeals with a term to expire on June 30th, 2022.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations. All right, the second one.
Madam Chair, I move the board vote to appoint Carla Parisi as an alternate member to the Zoning Board of Appeals with a term to expire on June 30th, 2020.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, thank you. Next, we have the Board of Registrars of Voters. Again, we have 2 candidates for 2 spots, is my understanding.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I
Mr.
move the board vote to appoint Donna Gerard and Jody McInerney to the Board of Registrar of Voters.
Second.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion
Aye.
has carried. And then we have Disability Commission.
Okay, Madam Chair, I move the board vote to appoint Robert Perla to the Disability Commission for a term to expire on June 30th, 2021.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Thank you for coming again. Would you like to say anything or no? Okay, okay. Any further discussion? Nope. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Congratulate, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have, appointments, town administrator appointments.
So, as the board knows, Joe Layden has left us. He went for another position, very happy for him. He does leave big shoes to fill. So we began the process of looking for a new town planner in November. We advertised, we received 8 candidates. We interviewed 5 of them through a process. We put together a committee, including myself, Bob Berger, Paul Canoia, Cindy Ide, and Tim. Tonight, we are excited to introduce Chris McGoldrick, who is here. Chris, if you want to come on up. Chris has been the assistant planner in Shrewsbury for 3 years. He has a solid foundation of education and experience that he brings with him. He's organized, he's analytical, he's good at explaining complex subject matters to boards and residents. He has a lot of experience working on mixed use, retail and housing, some experience with Lakeway Commons and also with Edgemere, which he will certainly answer questions about, I'm sure. Experience in 40B. He oversaw the Zoning Board of Appeals in Shrewsbury, so he's well versed in that process as well. So we're excited to have Chris here. We think that he can definitely take us into the next 10 years with Grafton, looking at economic development and getting those priority development sites moving. So if you have questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Chris?
Welcome.
Thank
How are
you.
you? Thanks for coming out tonight.
I appreciate
I
the
do have
opportunity.
one question for you.
Yep.
In your previous role at Shrewsbury, can you share with the community, because economic development has been a hot topic, I would say, within the past 7.5, 8 days. Could you share with us some of the initiatives and accomplishments that you had while you were at Shrewsbury?
Yeah, so a lot of the work that I've done personally in Shrewsbury for economic development, we work to really maintain relationships with potential developers and other business owners in the community. We've been working to create in the center of town the Shrewsbury Town Center Association, which is a group of businesses that work together on initiatives. They provide through the use of membership fees. It's really businesses working together to provide things like downtown beautification and other initiatives, shared workshops on kind of entrepreneurship. So that's one of the processes that we've been working on. We also work to maintain lists of vacant and developable properties in town. We find that that's critical when you have either a developer or interested party that comes in and says, hey, I have a business idea and I'm looking for this type of space. What's available in town? And you're able to provide a list of that where they can shop around for ways to kind of create that network of people looking for locations for economic development and also people looking to provide that space in town, creating those connections through those kinds of lists and maintenance of records.
Great, thank you.
Is any other questions for Chris?
I do. So, hi, Chris. Doreen, welcome.
Thank
So I'm just curious, not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm just curious, like, what are you most enthusiastic to get started on working in planning in Grafton? Because obviously it's a lot different than Shrewsbury in many ways, and we have a lot of projects going on. So what's most exciting to you?
Yeah, so I think the most exciting thing for me is the North Grafton Transit Oriented Village. That is a project that I think is it kind of has a roots in planning, kind of creating that node. Obviously working on an asset such as the train station, which as you know in Shrewsbury we don't have. So that kind of transit aspect is really interesting to me. So that's a project that at first glance, it's an opportunity to create retail environment and housing opportunities that I think are in this area really needed. Additionally, just all of the kind of progress that Grafton has done so far that I've seen is really impressive in regards to kind of regulations. The zoning I think is very up to date, which I think is very, very good. So I worked primarily in Shrewsbury on the zoning side of things, although we did do some of the long-range planning. But that shift from the kind of zoning aspects to a more planning-related field, which is what I went to school for, and I'm truly passionate about. I'm excited for that as well, to take on all of those kinds of aspects and really grow in that kind of a capacity.
That's great. Then I have one more actually. I'm Just curious if you have any background or experience in sustainability too, as far as sustainability projects or green community projects, any environmental projects going on? Were you involved in any of that in Shrewsbury? And how closely do you work on that with your planning projects? Obviously, coming from UMass Amherst too, which I know has a really great planning and sustainability schools. Just curious. It's something I'm passionate about, and I'm just wondering
Yeah,
what you
so
can bring to the table.
So sustainability from UMass, as you noted, that is something that we're really passionate about at that school, and that I've grown to really be passionate about as well. During my time at UMass, I actually worked with the community of Hanover, Massachusetts, where we worked on revitalizing an old mill facility, and they were looking at ways and kind of low-cost ways to aesthetically revitalize it. And part of what I looked at, I was really big into at that time, looking at phytotechnology, which is using plants to actually clean up pollution. Granted, that takes many, many years to really achieve noticeable goals, but kind of
maybe
the
on the
perspective
scope
I
I know.
said was the perspective that I came from was that if you're doing just landscaping and you're gearing the landscaping towards those environmental goals, something is better than nothing, and so that at least gets started on that track of including those technologies into kind of low-cost initiatives of landscaping until you can find better ways of addressing that kind of pollution. So that's just one of the projects, but yes, sustainability, things like rain gardens and things like that. All those infrastructure projects, I think, are critical to both creating vibrancy in the community and also low-cost, low-impact solutions to challenges that we see.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks. Does anybody have any further questions for Chris? No, anybody in the audience? Mr. Robbins, do you have anything to add, or as the chair of planning board? You don't have to, it's only if you would like to.
Not much to add, really, at this point in terms of getting to know Chris. I've only met him briefly for, maybe 15 to 20 minutes last week, so you know as much about his background as I do, but I have to say I've been favorably impressed, and I look forward to working very well together with Chris and having him support the planning board. We do have some overlapping interests. Matt Grafton is recently really getting going on some mixed-use facilities. Not just there. In addition to the North Grafton Transit Village, there are a couple of other opportunities that we have, and I'm personally quite look quite favorably on mixed use, and I think we're gonna find ourselves working very well together.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll entertain a motion
Madam
if you guys
Chair.
are ready.
I motion that we affirm the appointment of Christopher McGoldrick as town planner.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Mrs. Stuck?
I'm just wondering whether or not it would have been appropriate for the planning board chair or somebody else to serve on that search committee. I don't know if that's a routine protocol here, but I think it would have seemed to be appropriate. I know it was all internal candidates.
Sure. Yep, we did give Dave the opportunity to meet Chris last week, like he said. It's something that we can definitely consider in the future. And we have had board members serve on hiring committees before, so it's not unheard of.
Okay.
Yes. On that particular topic, I will point out that when we hired Joe, Tim and staff did some initial screening, but then they put together a committee consisting of myself, who I happened to be chair of the planning board back then too, and some other board chairs to interview several of the finalist candidates. So the process this time around was a little bit different. It left the board chairs pretty much entirely out of the process this time around, which I have to say I am a little bit disappointed in. I would have appreciated an opportunity to get to know Chris and the other candidates a little bit more ahead of time, but that's water under the bridge or over the dam or wherever it went. So something to keep in mind. I hope that we're not interviewing for a new town planner again anytime soon. Look forward to a good many years of Chris serving very well for the town.
Thanks, Dave. Any other Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next order of new business, we have a contract with CBA for the Super Park schematic design work, and, I know they are here. I am gonna set it up. You're welcome to sit there for now or come up, but we've had a lot of questions on just the history of Super Park, so, I'm gonna talk a little bit. So, before, just to set it up. So, we've had a lot of questions, when this item showed up on the agenda. So I was asked if I would provide an overview, the history of the park, and, how we got to where we are today. Because it is kind of a complicated little history we've had starts and stops and big bumps and little bumps, and, so to remind everybody, because now it has been 10 years since it's been torn down, so not everybody may remember that we used to have a playground next to the high school. It was built in the 80s. It was made of treated lumber, peat rock on the ground, tires, hot metal slides, and it was awesome. The kids loved it. It was a great meeting place. I have 3 kids within 3 years, so it was a place I visited often with them. They are now senior in high school, sophomore and freshman, so certainly my children are not going to be visiting any new playground in town, but it was great. It was a great meeting place for somebody taking care of kids, like the caretakers, to get out of the house, and you'd always see other families there, so it was just a great place. In 2010, it was removed to make way for the new high school. At that time, it was promised that we would relocate it, that we would find a spot to move it and to relocate it. The skate park was also removed at that time. I do want to note that because there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that also went into the skate park, and the skate park was located behind the municipal center, and that was removed as well. So this promise was made to relocate it, but of course that promise didn't come with any money. So right after that happened, the first Super Park Committee was formed, and that committee did a lot of excellent work. They examined sites, they looked at different equipment, and they really came to this philosophy, this idea that if we're going to provide another play structure, it really should be inclusive. It really should be a place where children of all ages and abilities can play together. So that really became their guiding mantra. They wanted this ADA accessible area for everybody to come together. And it's not just the kids with disabilities, and it's not just physical disabilities. The grandparents, the adults also being able to come and share the experience. And also it's for kids that have maybe sensory issues or other issues that you might not be able to see. So that committee settled on Worcester Street. We all know the site. There's nothing there now. In the fall of 2012, the committee secured CPC funding of $34,000 for a master plan to rebuild a super park at the Worcester Street site. It was approved at town meeting. They came before the Board of Selectmen at the time. And I think, again, I wasn't around back then, but my understanding is the board was hesitant to use that parcel, and basically the project died. So all of their work, kind of came to a halt. So since then, in 2014, I was elected to the board, and I have a background in recreation. I was a park ranger. I was a recreational forester, and I was like, what project can, I get excited about? And so I brought it up again. We kind of recreated a super park committee, and we wanted to get it moving again. At this point, we had the parcel for Peralt behind the library, and so a new site was kind of settled on. So okay, let's get some excitement along that site. So in May of 15, there were 2 articles town meeting floor. One for $143,000 that would have reallocated the leftover fire station monies to the super park. That one was defeated. And $100,000 in CPA money, and that one was approved. The 143 required a 2/3, and that was defeated. So in the fall of 2015, town meeting appropriated $290,000, and that money was reallocated from tax overlay monies. So as all of you know, but to make it out there, so we collect extra money in case of exemptions and abatements for the taxes. And every once in a while, so often the Board of Assessors can vote to release some of that money. So they had voted to, that money became available. It was brought to town meeting, and town meeting decided in favor of putting that money towards the super park. So since then, so while we are attempting to complete this project, we're trying, this is the part that is, tricky. We were trying to do it as cheaply as possible, because again, the price tag, we had just built a high school. The price tag was big, so we were trying to kind of piecemeal things together, and we wanted to do it in a phased approach, and that's what we had talked to the town about. We did do some engineering, and then we got this passed, and basically our estimates were kind of off. The parking lot that we would have had to make to build was way too expensive. There were also some issues with the water, and at the same time, the library started their work on their expansion, so it was kind of decided, let's wait and see what the library is doing. We don't quite have enough money to complete what we want to do, and so it got kind of put on hold. During that time, we did apply for some grants. The feedback we got, and we did not get any, the feedback we got on it is because of the phased approach, they wanted to see the town committed to more of the project costs before they would give us some grants, but it was researched at the time. So now that the library has finished its plans, so we got together again, because now we have the library has gone through all of their processes, and actually the site that we are thinking about putting the park is now taken up by library parking. Pros and they need a lot of parking for the library in order to qualify for the grant that they're going for. So I had gotten together with Jen Anderson, Tim, and Andy DeShane, which now we have a project manager at our disposal, Andy DeShane, which is very helpful. At that point, the Super Park Committee had been dissolved. When I wrote that charge, I wrote in it, we have so many committees that are on the books, but they never meet. So when I had written that charge, I said if we hadn't met in a year, that the committee would dissolve. So that committee has dissolved. And so we talked about having Rec Commission take the lead, because this is really a project for recreation anyway. They're the ones that are going to have to maintain it. And we could use their commission as guidance towards this. We could use them as the committee. We didn't necessarily need a Super Park committee. So as the Recreation Commission looked at it, they recommended that we didn't just look at the play structure portion. They wanted to see the entire parcel and what could be done, because over this time they've been going through goals and ideas, and we've been doing the open space and rec planning, and they wanted to see what other needs could be met on this parcel. Maybe a walking trail, maybe a pavilion, a grassy area for families to picnic. So the open space and recreation plan is going to be finalized soon, and it does identify a need for open space and just places for people to picnic. It also identifies opportunities for more ADA compliant recreational opportunities in town. So so moving forward, Tim and Becca and I have told you where we're going on this process. We've updated this board. We told you we wanted to send out an RFP, which we did. We got 12 applications. We interviewed 2, and CBA is the people that we have decided to go with. And I will send it to him in just a second. So I do want to mention that out of the 290,000 that was allocated in May or in October of 15, we do have $275,694 left in that account. Again, around the 15 grand was spent on a lot of the engineering work and the surveying work, all of which still is available. The surveying work that was done by land planning. And then, so we're getting a lot of questions about, do people still want a super park? So it is the most common question I get when I'm out and about town, and I understand that that is not a survey or a, you know, that's not conclusive. But we did just recently did 2 other surveys. One of the surveys that we did was for the Grafton Common Gateway project. That's what to do with the old DPW station. And the highest response for that location, which is across the street from this site, is to use that site for parks and recreation. Also high was this, adding more businesses was also another thing that was very high for that DPW site. But again, people are still thinking about more recreational opportunities here in town. And again, I mentioned the open space and recreation plan. One of the questions that was asked on that survey, what is the biggest unmet open space and recreation need? Children's playgrounds came in second to water supply protection. So it's not like we have not repeatedly asked this question. We have, and we're still feeling like there is still a desire to see this project completed. Again, we had one, we removed it, and so we're trying to replace what we had. Let's see, the question about fundraising. So it's really a chicken or egg question for me. We have not done fundraising yet. We have $235 in a gift account, the Super Park gift account. It's hard to ask people for money when we don't have a vision and we don't have a solid vision, and when we don't have approval from the town to move forward with this project. So it's really hard to ask to go out and fundraise for a project we don't know for sure if it's happening or not. Let's see. So this visioning process will help with that, certainly. When we can show people what it will look like, that is all stuff that will help us. And why now? Why are we talking about this now? Especially when there's talks about an override. Well, there's lots of reasons. First, just to understand the difference between operational monies and capital monies. Super Park is a project, the money set aside cannot be used for operational based on our past fiscal policies. Now, it can be used for capital needs if it gets voted such at town meeting. But it was set aside for Super Park. The town, I have so many notes because I was writing everything down I could think of. But the real reason why we're doing it now is because the library is under construction. And if we're going to make any decisions about what's going to be there, what kind of utilities might have to go through the site to get to the back part of the parcel, we kind of have to know now. We don't want to dig up a brand new parking lot and landscaping to put in water and electrical and stuff. So we really need to figure out what exactly we want to do with the parcel, what the public wants to do with the parcel, and plan for that. So it's $34,000 now to do planning for to avoid probably triple that if we had to tear up a parking lot and landscaping to lay utilities down. And also just the business of the town moves on. I mean, we are having those conversations. And if we don't, this project has had so many starts and stops. We really have to, I don't know if it's gonna take another stop. So that is my, what did I miss? Because I feel like, I know I spoke for a really long time, and I'm sorry.
No,
And
that's a good summary.
I will answer questions if I missed anything. Yes.
Madam Chair, so the one other thing you can answer for me, maybe for the public, my understanding of questions and comments that the board has received is there's a price tag out there of about $1 million for this project. I don't know if that's true or not, and it seems that we've raised right now $275,000. So the question is more of, are we going to spend $34,000 on a design plan if we don't have a plan in place to fill that funding gap? And whether it's in lieu of an override discussion or not, that money can be reallocated to some things. And so, you know, how important is this project to the public at this time, knowing that there's $700,000 that needs to be raised, whether it's through grants or through fundraising or, you know, whatnot, town meeting. And, you know, I'm in favor of the project. I just want to put this out there. I'm in favor of the project. If the public is in favor of the project, you know, I want this project to succeed. But that seems to be the question that I'm receiving is, do we have the money to do this? And how are we getting the money to do this? And are we going to spend the $34,000 to design something that we can't complete? And, you know, my answer to that is what you've said, which is, if we don't spend the $34,000 now, we could be spending $75,000 or $100,000 down the road. So that's a decision that needs to be made. But I don't know if you can answer that question. I don't know where the $1 million price tag is from. On that would be the cost of Super Park. Does that sound right to you, or
Well,
could you answer that?
I will, first, thank you for pointing out, because the funding questions again. So, the price tag, we really don't know, which is why we want to have the services of CBA to help us determine what exactly those costs are. The number really has jumped around, and that is because we've had a lot of ideas, right? I mean, and again, we started 10 years ago, so the number just gets up. But is there going to be a splash pad? Is there going to be a skate park? Is there going to be a trail? These numbers have jumped around, so I really can't tell you exactly what the final price tag is until we have this company do our work, do outreach with the community, find out what they want. We certainly had talked about a phased approach, and putting it out there. So the funding, the big chunk of the funding, not that 275 isn't a big chunk, because it is a big chunk, the plan is to ask the Community Preservation Committee for it.
Okay.
That is monies that can only be used for recreation, open space, historical restorations, and affordable housing. So the CPC has supported Super Park in the past. We are hopeful they will support it in the future. And of course, once it goes through CPC's process, it ends up at town meeting, and which is where we get the answer, the definitive answer. Does the town still want this? But we bring it to town meeting to determine that. And so I know when we were talking about the DPW site, Peter, you had mentioned like maybe a rec center there might be a good idea. Rec centers cannot be built with CPC money because that's an indoor facility. CPC money can only be used for those uses, and that recreation component of that needs to be an outdoor facility. So those are the monies that we're looking for to fund this. So no new taxes. Again, we have an existing $275,000 that was allocated past town meeting. The new monies needed, the plan is to go for CPC monies and grants and fundraising.
Madam Chair.
Oh, I saw Donna first.
Just two questions. One is what happened to the $100,000 that CPA already approved?
That sunsetted.
Okay. And then I received correspondence from Colleen Roy. I don't know if it's the same. It was addressed to me, so I don't know if the rest of the board members received it, but I think you've addressed all of the questions. The number that she used in terms of the cost of the super park was 1.3 million. So I think you've just addressed that too, that we don't know what the cost is.
I don't. I can say in terms of, we were again, it was all based on estimates that are old estimates. They worked out, they kind of weren't great after we did that first phase and we got the funding, that things were much more expensive. When we went through planning, conservation, they wanted permeable pavement, which kind of knocked the price tag right out when we were trying to put a parking lot in. We just couldn't afford to do that. New sidewalks and all that. There were things that kept being added to the project that we just didn't. So by hiring a professional team, we are hoping to answer all those questions. All of the cost estimates. That's why we're trying to go forward and do it this way, to make sure we can get a handle on that price tag. Now, in terms of the play equipment itself, we had always just used, when talking to playground suppliers, the 500 grand. Like, what kind of equipment can we get for 500? As a baseline, so that's kind of our estimate for the play equipment and surfacing. But by now it's probably higher because it's been a really long time and things cost more now than they did 10 years ago. But the process, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the process that, do you have, yep.
Oh, yeah, Madam Chair, I think when people are referring to the price tag, it comes from page 2 of the proposal. For the following fee proposal, CBA assumes a stage 1 construction budget of approximately $1.3 million. So I guess I have two questions. Number one, what is stage 1? And number two, how, when, and where was 1.3 decided upon? It had to come from someplace, because when we were talking about this, not 10 years ago, but 5 years ago, it was $540,000. So that's over twice as much.
Sure.
Okay, that was from your
well,
proposal.
So the 1.3 million figure came from discussions both during our interview and with Tim's office separately about what sort of budget they were anticipating at that stage. I would say that the phase 1 cost, which is the master planning and the visioning, is really sort of it's its own entity of sorting that out. And to some extent, if we finish that and the consensus from the town is, we've got 600,000, 500,000, whatever the figure is, or this looks awesome, we can find 2 million to do this, we can adapt the later phases to work with that. And really the goal right now is to help the town put together enough of a vision for what you're looking for and what the goals really are through an extensive public input process, to find out both what a realistic price tag is for what that vision is, and then also how to break it into phases or funding. And stage 1 could be just the play equipment and related surfacing to make it safe, could be even just a small portion of what the overall vision of the playground is, if that's what the funding that's available that the town can raise allows. It could be rather extensive and beyond what we've talked about of the play equipment and possibly a splash pad, and get into doing the pavilion if the enthusiasm's there for it. And really, once we've got a picture of what you're looking for and what the cost for that are, we would then work with the town to figure out what an appropriate stage 1 construction is. The 1.3 million figure that's in there is what we were given as the sort of target budget that's being thought about at this time. But that's
not just
Yeah.
for the
and
playground structure.
that's
For the
construction.
the whole
Yeah.
area.
That's not our fee.
So it might include a splash pad. It might include a pavilion. It might include all sorts of other things that it is just a real big ballpark.
And your fee is based on approximately 10% of the overall projected construction cost?
I mean, the projected fees, I don't even know if they made it into this. I think that line is left in there. Yes. So the fees, yes, in that the phase two fee, which would be taking whatever is developed. Right now, if you were to continue going forward at about 1.3, and we get through the master plan, and that's really both realistic and what you want to do, then the phase two fee portion comes in. But at this point, we're only asking for an approval of the phase one, which is the visioning and master planning effort, and determining what scope to seek approval for at town meeting to use to fundraise and to seek out other grants.
Okay, I guess my question's a little bit different. It's, if you're basing the total fee here, phase one and phase two, because this is what it says, off
Right.
of the 1.3 million, if we were to use our original project estimate, would that affect your fee structure?
I mean, it would affect the fee structure for phase two, definitely, of getting through construction drawings. Whether it would affect the fee structure for phase one, given the scale of sort of the visioning effort that we've discussed, it'd also have to affect the scope of it and how much public process we really went into.
Okay.
Yeah, to be completely frank about it, the phase one is a fairly intensive visioning effort to get to a resolution of what you're really looking for at this stage of things, and to give you a game plan to roll forward with into future phases as funding allows.
Okay.
Peter, did you have a question?
It's kind of going back a little bit more on your commentary. Great summary, by the way. Thank you for outlining all of the developments in the detail. I mean, who doesn't want to see a new park, right? Used for kids and adults alike. But I have to state this to this board, that after last week's report about where our town finances are, I understand that this money will be utilized with CPC funds and things that are not taxpayer money, but CPC funds are taxpayer money at the end of the day, which we appropriate at town meeting. But what I'm more concerned about is the potential of our town's finances with the looming deficit that we're facing to operate the town at a level service, but then adding an additional expense of maintaining or upkeeping of a new park over time. I'm not quite sure if we're putting the cart before the horse here. And as much as a $34,000 schematic design would help define the stages and provide a plan that we could all at least have some sort of basis, whether it's $500,000, $1 million, or 1.3 million. I mean, I don't even know what the figure is right now, so I'm a little reluctant to really kind of give an actual, let's go forward with a $500,000 project. But again, there seems to be some sentiment in the town about reconsideration of such a project, and whether people have come up to me in the past few days and have stated their objections to it because of just the recent news, or that I kind of equate this as, hey, we discovered an ailment 5 years ago, and we're finally now getting to the treatment. And wouldn't you want to go out and get a second opinion before you went for someone's treatment of something that was diagnosed 5 years ago? In this case, I kind of look at this as something that this was decided upon when we were in different economic times, where we had some capacity within our levy limit to take on this new project or perhaps maintain it. But I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that I'm concerned. I'm concerned about the statement that this would give, and I know the money is allocated there, so I'm not questioning about reappropriating money, but I'm just concerned about the message we're sending. So our decision tonight to approve, a schematic design for $34,000, I know was the very beginning of this, for something that I'm told right here in this document that could be up to $1.3 million, and then I look at how is this town going to afford to maintain that after the project's done, where I have to potentially tell our constituents we may be cutting staff, but without cutting anything on the municipal side. I have to tell you, after last Tuesday, I'm pretty much dead set against moving something forward that could add additional liabilities to this town until we figure out our finances. I just want to make sure I state that openly. You all heard it here together. It's not that I'm against the park. Like I said, who doesn't want a park? But have we figured out how to maintain and how to keep this going? Because we have a hard time maintaining our other parks. That's all I have to say.
Question, Donna?
know that we are looking at, through the Disability Commission, our ADA compliance at parks and other open spaces and buildings, et cetera. So I think, in terms of the conception of having something like this that is designed for students and grandparents and parents or whatever, would be something that I think would be an asset for the town, because we're not necessarily compliant in all of our other spaces. And there's going to be money that's required for that. So I think $34,000 investment at this particular point to just find out where we stand and whether or not we can pursue this doesn't mean we're committing to anything, but I think this is an investment that would be a minimal amount at this point versus what may be a larger amount in the future if we are talking about having to rip up our parking lot and landscaping at the library or something like that. So I'd like to know, and I think this is the opportunity for us to make an informed decision for the community on this, recreational need.
Does anybody in the audience want to speak? Colleen?
Colleen Roy, Elmwood Street. I just have a question. Do you guys know when the library parking lot will be completed? Is there a rush to get this RFP signed tonight and have a second master plan essentially created for the super park? Or can we bring it to town meeting and see if there's still an appetite for this before we invest any more money in this? Because this would be the second master plan, correct?
No.
You did a first one at a different location?
No, that the money was approved for that master plan, but then it was approved at town meeting to do a master plan, but then when they came to get the final approval from the Board of Selectmen at the time, they put a stop to the project. So that money was returned to CPC.
Okay.
So that plan was never completed.
So when will the
Make that
library?
clear.
Yeah, sorry, I would that's helpful. But when would the library parking lot be completed? Is there a rush to get it done like immediately tonight, or can we wait till May?
Well, so again, it's another cart. It's hard to. First, the parking lot is going to be completed next spring.
Yeah, not before.
Next-
The
not-
idea of the timing right now is to try to get the visioning process going before Maytown meeting, because we've sort of been using Maytown meeting as a goal line for whether or not the town is prepared to pursue the project moving forward. So it's gather around a design with a price tag, an idea for how to pay it, and then in May, go to the town and say, do you want to do this or not? And that way we're prepared for when the library does happen in the spring, the following spring, we know whether or not we have to lay utility, or if it fails in May and people don't want to do it, then we
we're
don't
done.
have to worry about that.
Okay, so you don't even know if people still want to do this, but you want to come up with a design and find out if they want to do it,
Well,
right?
we do think
We do
people,
think people wanna do
because
it.
of the surveys that we've done recently for
Okay.
the other visioning processes in town.
All right, thank you.
I would say too that from our perspective, I have seen plenty of projects happen where it gets through the visioning session and gets through everything else and gets tabled until the finances come together, or until the town in question sorts out whatever financial issue may be happening or what have you. And it gives both something to come back to and build upon instead of redoing that process from the start. And also, as Becca said, allows any infrastructure that needs to get put in place to get put in place. It's pretty cheap to run empty conduit under the parking lot if you know where it needs to go to fit a certain vision. And, we've done phased projects for the city of Boston where in the course of the initial phase, we ran conduits under the pathway because we knew where in the master plan the lights were going to go, even though we had no idea if those were coming 2 years later or 7 years later or what. And for that matter, whether it was going to be us or someone else who picked up that master plan and ran it to the next phase of construction. I think that I recognize that I'm advocating for my own contract here for this phase, but to a certain extent that the foresight in getting through this initial stage and then bringing that to town meeting to find out whether it moves forward makes a fair amount of sense in terms of doing due diligence rather than regretting it later.
Dan, did you have a question? just state your name and such.
Dan Kusher, 6 Lord Vale Boulevard. So there's some money that's been approved by town meeting, right? I think was it 290 or 275 or something?
It was approved at 290, and some money was spent on surveying and early engineering work, so there's 275 left.
Okay, so my concern would be if we were talking about funding this entirely out of CPC funds, that would be one thing, but if the select board is going to be asking people to approve an override that includes potentially one of the things that Tim recommended, one of the options, with $1 million for capital every single year. And I think it would help to show voters that this board is serious about using everything we have to reduce the burden on the taxpayers if that money could be reallocated to some more pressing need that the town has. I'm not saying parks and playgrounds are not important. I'm not saying an accessible playground is not something that should be a priority, but we do have a list of capital needs that I think if this money could be used towards that, it's more than a quarter of the annual amount that we're potentially, as an option, going to be asking taxpayers to approve in the override. So I think it's just a considerable chunk of that $1 million that I think that's an option that should be considered, reallocating it at town meeting. So.
I hear you, and I will just say that we will always have capital needs. Always. They're never gonna, and it's always a balancing what's most pressing and what's not, and so I thank you for your input. I do hear you. But we do always have capital needs. The last time, and Peter had mentioned like that this was new. We were going through the same process the last time we did an override as well. If you look at the timing of Super Park and the override, we were doing it at the same time then as well. So I am always in favor of asking the voters. So and best way to do that is at town meeting. So give them opportunity to come and tell us what they'd like to do, get good cost estimates that we can use to move forward. And again, if we decide not to move forward with this contract, pretty much we're done with Super Park. So, yes.
Sitaraman Ganesan, 28 Seaver Farm Lane. It makes more sense to, build a super park. We don't have anything. I mean, I've been in this town for more than 19 years. I go play golf. If I want to go relax somewhere, park is a good place to be. So it makes sense. Let's spend the money now than later. Thank you.
Thank you. Anne Marie?
Hi, Anne Marie Foley, 45 South Street. So I was the chair of the Super Park Renovation Committee when we renovated it back in the early 90s, maybe mid 90s. Additionally, I was the chair of the Skate Park Committee back when we built that. So I will say I was also involved when the school committee, the high school building committee, we were told that both parks would be replaced when the high school took down both parks. Additionally, I was here for the votes, all of the votes that you're talking about, related to the Super Park over the years. So I was at all of those town meetings along with a lot of other people who voted for this money time and again for the Super Park. And yet here we are 10 years later still wondering whether or not we should be looking at this. So what happened to my vote time and time again? And not only my vote, but other people's votes as well. So I do think that it's fair that we would spend a small amount of money at this point to try to determine if this is still feasible at all, given that some of us have been waiting 10 years that have been involved in it for that long. I have no personal, my kids are both not only graduated from high school but from college at this point, so it's not really a thing for my kids, but it's really just a matter of, I voted time and again for this. I've been hearing about it, that we are going to pursue this. I was told when the two parks were torn down that they would be replaced. So as a townsperson, a voter, and a taxpayer, I think that I deserve at least some sort of conclusion other than just, we've got another big issue right now, so sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Are we doing discussion, or are we moving on to discussion after we take a vote? Because I have discussion.
Okay, you want to wait until after there's a motion?
Yeah.
Okay, so no further questions
Right.
for,
Yeah.
no further questions. We didn't even, you got jumped right into this
That's all right.
conversation that was
That's
already gone.
absolutely okay.
So can you just, before we get to that point, tell us a little bit about yourself, your firm,
Sure.
everybody, what this contract is going to allow us to do?
Sure. I'm DJ Shagnon. I'm a principal at CBA Landscape Architects. I've been there actually since 2002, working with Clara Batchelor, our founder. And over that time, over the firm's time, we've designed over 90 public parks, playgrounds, schoolyards, in a wide variety of settings. And we actually place a real emphasis to address Mr. Carlson's concern on being as maintenance friendly and low cost as possible. We're used to dealing with municipalities, ranging from the town of Medway, who recently put in a couple of rather large parks, that we worked with them from the very initial master planning stages, visioning the whole concept through construction of their phase one improvements, and they were blessed with quite a big payment in lieu of taxes situation and had a lot of funds to spend on that, which was great for them in terms of construction. All the way down to small municipalities like the city of Chelsea, who are dealing with a very different condition than you are out here, obviously, but also have really limited maintenance resources in a lot of ways. And we're used to dealing with those long-term maintenance concerns and working with the town, the municipality, to make sure that those are addressed in the design so that everything is as maintenance friendly as possible going forward and that it all works for your needs. We also really pride ourselves on an investment in public process and in community input into the design to make sure that what comes up isn't just us as designers on high saying, here's the best park for your site, but it's really a listening and a collaboration with all of the stakeholders, from the community members to the boards involved, the Disability Commission, the Recreation Commission, everyone of the sort, to really build the best possible design. I think you have a fantastic opportunity here in the site next to the library, given that it's going to be an expanded, children's facility and everything else, and it's right near the town common. It's got a great potential to really be the right home for the super park if the funding works and if it goes ahead. And the only way to find that out, in my eyes, is to have those conversations, find out what the decision really is, and bring something to town meeting that people can envision and react to. So that's where I would come from it, and we're really excited to work with the town on the project. It's a fantastic opportunity and a really positive vision for what the space could be, and recognizing that it may not get past this phase one, that we may get to town meeting and it sits on a shelf for 2 more years or whatever else. But having an idea of what it is for that next stage, I think I would hope feels to you like a good investment.
Thanks, DJ. Any other questions or comments? Peter?
Madam Chair, I move the board vote to allow the chair to sign the contract with CBA in the amount of $34,000 for phase one of the super park design.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, Madam Chair. So I can't in good conscience vote for this because despite the fact that the town did take a couple of different votes to provide funding for this in the past, this isn't the scope of the project that we voted for 5 years ago. As the chairwoman pointed out, there was one vote to supply about $195,000 worth of funding that lost. There was another vote taken for $100,000 in CPA funds that have since sunset. That went through Finance Committee and only passed by a vote of 4-3. And I remember that town meeting. There was a lot of discussion back then. This was on the heels of our last override about whether or not this was something that we wanted to be pursuing. At the time, the discussion was it was going to be $540,000. That's what was brought to the town. And that's the project that town voters have approved. And we haven't heard anything from Super Park Committee or from Recreation until now, years later, saying, well, now we're looking at a budget of potentially 1.3, and that's for stage one, whatever stage one turns out to be. So it's not just that, oh, it's a small chunk of change, $34,000, maybe it goes nowhere. First of all, I would never want $34,000 the town's money to go nowhere, okay? If we're gonna do this, I wanna do this knowing that $34,000 is going to turn into something. Because we keep doing that, we keep spending money on studies, and sometimes they go places, sometimes they don't. From a messaging perspective, this sends entirely the wrong message to the community right now. We're sort of all over the place with our message. On the one hand, we say we're in great financial shape one year, and then the next year we're asking somebody for $6.5 million in override money. And then we're coming back and saying, well, but this is a little bit different. You voted for this before, which we didn't. And, you know, we have enough money now to pursue this park, a scope of which is twice as big as we'd seen before. And we're asking people to trust us in this process for the override, that we're responsible stewards, that we can manage their money well. And when they hear that the last time this was before us, it was half as much, and now it's twice as much, that makes me uncomfortable. Before I could vote for something like this, I would need to see this contract reflect the project cost of $540,000, which is what was discussed. Or I would need to hear much, much more. I would want to hear from the Community Preservation Committee that they would vote to authorize $1 million in additional funding, because that's what this is. It's $1 million in additional funding from what we have now. And then I would want the town to talk long and hard about, well, do we want CPC to spend $1 million on just this project? Because certainly CPC can do other things as well. What are our priorities? I don't know that they would even say that they want this project anymore. So things as they are right now, I cannot in good conscience vote for this. So that's where I'm at with this.
I just wanted, just a point of clarity, the visioning process is what is step one. The 1.3 that is in that contract is not just one step of the project. That's the project estimate entirety, again, which we don't know. Some things are more expensive than others. So just to clarify that point. Any other?
Madam Chair, I just want to put on the record that although we are in discussion, we're talking about, an override, a potential override at this point, I think it's important to stay the course with this and get public input and go through a public process. And, I have to think that this has been going on for 10 years. And even if something doesn't happen for another 10 years, to, have the strategy of thinking ahead that 10 years from now that we had the foresight to put conduit in the ground underneath the parking lot in the library so it doesn't have to be ripped up then. I'm not necessarily saying that the townspeople are going to have to vote on whether or not and what they want to spend on this project. CPC is going to have to tell us what they are willing to give us toward the project. But I think at this time, in order to keep this goal alive for the community, which is what's been asked again and again for a decade, that doing this preliminary work, and I also want to say that this board has also requested that this meeting happen. So, we talk about, in lieu of recent budget conversations, but we've also asked you to go ahead and get get a contractor in place to do this design work, did we not?
We certainly updated the board all along on what we're planning to do, and
But this is the first $1.3 million price tag we've seen.
But we don't have to spend 1.3 million.
But
Is
we-
that right? I mean, like,
We
let me
don't,
just-
but if it's on here, the assumption I'm operating under is it's not gonna be $540,000
So
anymore.
I can't imagine that this community is going to have a $1.2 million super park right now. I mean, I don't think it's gonna happen. I think we're looking at more like a phase one of, this is what we have. We have $275 minus 32,000. And, you know, we fundraised another 100,000. We got a grant. We have $450,000. Build us a park. You know, so I guess that's where I'm coming from. If I can take away the ridiculousness of having a $1 million park right now in lieu of discussions, I'm thinking more of, let's get this design started, let's get more community input, and let's bring to town meeting something that people can say, oh, I have a vision of that, and yeah, no way do I want that right now, or yeah, I do want to continue to move forward. And, you know, like Anne Marie brought up a few minutes ago, people have voted on this in the past, and I think it would be a disservice to sort of kill the project, because if we vote no on this, it's the end of discussions for Super Park, and I think there's a lot of people who would be disappointed in that.
I don't think that's necessarily true. I think if somebody goes back and rewrites this proposal to say a construction budget of approximately $540,000, it'd have my vote, because that's what we discussed before.
Okay.
Okay? I don't trust that we're just going to assume that it's all going to work out and the fee's going to be lower. That hardly ever happens with construction projects. It hardly specifically ever happens with public construction projects. And again, you know, the process so far has been, well, the last time we saw the Super Park Committee was 2016. It was a different scope altogether. It went to Recreation Commission. The one and only time I saw the Recreation Commission in their minutes address this, they didn't at all address scope with a $1.3 million price tag. It was just that Super Park Committee had been disbanded, and they're going to talk about location and colors, quote unquote. They can reach out to the schools, to the community members, and allow them to vote on colors or playground pieces, et cetera. There was no larger scope included in anything here. So it seems like there have been discussions outside of Recreation Commission, outside of Super Park Committee about what the scope was, and we've lost control of it already. This is a classic case of public works mission creep, where it's larger now. And I just don't have the faith that we're gonna rein it back in all of a sudden. So when this proposal says $540,000, I'll vote for it, but until then I can't.
Madam Chair, can I say one more thing?
yeah.
So we're not deciding whether it's a $1 million park or not. The voters will decide that.
But we're basing our fee off of it right now.
So, yeah, I don't like a $1 million park price either. So, you know, can we say we don't want a $1 million park scope? Like,
Yeah, in the
you know,
visioning
in the vision, you know, like, but I think,
absolutely.
you know, this is what happens with all visions. This is what happens with a master plan. People think big, right? And then we go back to it and we say, okay, so based on all the concepts and designs that the public has, you know, a want for, it's going to cost this much money. However, this is our budget. So what can we do for this budget?
But if that's the case,
And the answer can be nothing. We don't want to do anything.
I just want to see it in writing. I mean, call me a lawyer, but
Fair enough.
I want to
Yeah,
see it in writing.
fair enough.
You know? But if
I'm
we're
just-
basing a fee that we're paying off of something that we think we want to be smaller anyway, I don't know why we're paying $34,000 for it. Because that fee was based off of the 1.3.
But this fee is also based on not just to replace the 540 that you're talking about was just equipment. This is about the entire parcel, envisioning for the entire parcel. And Rec Commission has other goals and ideas about what can be done and needs that can be done on that parcel. So the visioning includes that as well.
I guess I'd like to hear from those guys too before I say yes to this.
So, any other discussion? All right, so I have a motion and a second. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
I abstain, Madam Chair.
All right, motion carried. Thank you
Thank you.
for coming in.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have select board reports. any member of the select board wish to share a report?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Just to share with the community that the Fire Study Committee will have a public hearing, its last public hearing on January 27th. This is part of the requirement that we said we would do, 2 public outreach meetings where any member of the public can come and speak to the Fire Study Committee to ask questions or address any of the concerns on the developments that have occurred thus far. Please look at the town website for the location. I think they're trying to get the second floor school department conference room, or if there's another conference room available, that's up to the clerk to kind of get those logistics on that charge.
Thank you.
So, that's all I have.
Thank you. Any other reports?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just want to give an update on the Grafton Sustainability Commission. Some of the questions that members of the community have asked about, basic functions of government and where we stand in terms of cost taxation services provided relative to other communities will hopefully be answered in the coming weeks and months by the GSC. The process that we began back in September was one of data collection. Step 1 is publishing a benchmarking report that we've collected all the data for now. I'm in the middle of drafting that. I hope to have that done and approved by the GSC within the next couple of weeks, which we will then publish. The following reports will relate to municipal cost structure, school cost structure, capital planning, and I know that I'm leaving something else. Economic development. But those are forthcoming. The process that we're in now is one of just interviewing department heads and stakeholders and gathering public input. So we have a meeting set up with the town administrator on the 29th, and other meetings are going to be set up thereafter. But he's sort of obviously the big one, and then after that we flow down the chart.
Do you have a date you would like me to put you on the agenda for yet?
No, I don't, but I will communicate that to you as soon as I can.
Any other stuff?
The Disability Commission last week was informed, and I know the school select board has already been, but for the community's information, was denied a recent application, a grant application for what would have helped us improve the ramp at the senior center and some of the other concerns that were around this building. Given that we've already, I guess, put it in for next year's budget, this would have been an opportunity for us to reallocate those dollars for something else. So it was a $50,000 request, and we just learned that it was denied.
Okay. Any
Thanks for
other?
going after that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other? I have a lot, so
Okay.
you can go first.
So, Madam Chair, you tell me if you want this in a different part of the agenda or not. But there was a request to discuss where we are with our goals and really identify, what we have done since the goals meeting on our goals. So since I had initiated the goals meeting, I am prepared to talk about that if you want me to talk about it in this section of the meeting, or I can wait.
Why don't we do that in correspondence?
Sounds great.
Because it came through. We
Yep.
all received that correspondence, so if you could.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, so a couple things I want to bring up. This morning, Doreen and I did the DPW tour. I know Donna is going tomorrow. I know Peter has been multiple times because he is on the committee. It's really exciting. They're looking for completion towards the end of March. And then a move-in May.
Yep.
He had mentioned. So I just wanted to mention that we did that this morning. And again, Donna will do another opportunity tomorrow morning to do that. And then I also had I took advantage of, I was offered a tour of the food bank. We all were invited to tour the food bank. And so I went up there today, and I just, it's a great organization up there. They have 47 volunteers. They distribute to approximately 100 families, 120 or so over the holidays. You can call them anytime, 508-277-4535. The next distribution is actually this Thursday, so they distribute food twice a month. Please, if you know of anybody that is in need, who's a resident of Grafton, please encourage them to contact the food bank. It is a resource that is here, and we would like people that need it to take advantage of that resource. But Dolores was a wealth of information, And if people would like to donate to the food bank, you can do so by check. Their P.O. Box is 324 at the Center Post Office 01519. Make checks out to Grafton Food Bank. You can also drop a check off at the clerk's or at our office that we can run it up to them. What else? But it was a great tour, and I encourage people to continue. The town is very generous; they get a lot of donations, but to continue to do so. Toiletries are actually an area that they could use more of, because it's not something that people typically think of when they donate to the food bank. So just please keep the food bank in your thoughts, and they, as I said, always accept donations. And we also had the DPW, so the old DPW site, we're going through a visioning process to determine the best use for that parcel. So that is an economic development type of project. I don't know if you were also at the meeting. I was there, Doreen was there, but we started that process. It was well attended, I thought. They had provided some different ideas of mixed use or totally recreation, and got some feedback from the public in their ongoing visioning process. So we don't know when the next one will be yet.
There will be another one.
There will be another one, yeah. So we'll make sure you're aware of when that is, so people can come and participate in that. But we're excited for the opportunity to, again, everything kind of fits in together there. So that was exciting. And I did secure our coffee hour at the senior center on March 4th at 10:30. So it's just an opportunity for people in the senior center to ask us questions. I did extend an invitation to the school committee to join us, because in the past we do receive questions that are more school related from the seniors. So I'm pretty sure we'll have some representation from them at that. And then in terms of scheduling, I just wanted to double check. So our meetings in February, we have a meeting on the 4th and on the 11th, and then on the 18th. So the 18th is school vacation week. So I will be on vacation. I've already spoken to Doreen. She's prepared to chair the meeting, but I just wanted to make sure that the rest of the members are around before we continue planning a meeting. I just want to make sure that we have a quorum. So if not, let us know as soon as possible so that we can reschedule the meeting. And TA report. Oh, sorry.
GCTV too. You forgot to
Oh, I
mention.
forgot that
Yeah.
one. See, I knew we were so busy. I also attended the open house at the cable studio, the new cable studio. Really exciting opportunities. It's right here on the campus. The kids, they're really looking to provide more programming using the high school and middle school kids. They've started this bus stop weather program that's really fun. So if you guys have a chance to check out the facility, you really should. It's
Impressive.
it's very impressive. And just to remind everybody, that is paid for by our contract fees with Verizon and cable. So that all of that work was completed with those fees, not from, our
It was borrowed, but
borrowed,
the
but
debt will be paid back with franchise fees.
so. But it's a great facility, so I encourage everybody. It's really nice there, right, Billy? Billy's in the booth. Yeah, he's giving me a thumbs up.
See that?
I can
It's
see.
like behind that fucking glass. Billy's like, hide us.
Yeah, so if anybody has, and they're very open to provide, if anybody's interested in becoming a producer or learning more about cable access, please contact them. They're really excited and willing to share and bring in new people and all of that.
Madam Chair, if I could just comment on that. So being a producer for almost 30 years myself, I think I just aged myself, but the Grafton Public Access Studio offers those classes on videography, but also video editing, and they have a lot of other tools that I think it's open to the community, and it's one of the best resources I can think of that gets community involvement with our cable studio. And like you said, all of those funds to buy the equipment, to pay for the staff that are there. Billy, who's behind the monitor back there tonight, is all paid through those funds, through our cable access funds through Charter and Verizon. Like I said, I continue to support that organization heavily. It's one of the first things I did that was part of the town that's kind of outside of the schools, but I just want to give a good shout out to those people who maintain that studio. Fantastic job. I'm sorry I missed you on Friday. I didn't want to get everyone sick, so I've already seen the place before.
Thank you for that.
Yes,
that,
yeah,
yes.
I was doing the community a favor, and I look forward to the continued use of that facility. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, the TA report.
So just a couple of things. A Route 30 update. Project is finishing up now. Final coordinated paving will happen in June when school is out. The pump station equipment that's being ordered by and installed by the contractor, the developer, I should say, will be delivered in late January, and we are hoping that the line is operational by April. So that's good. This week we do have a meeting with our consultants to hopefully get a renewal number for health insurance. This will impact the budget numbers, but we will be able to give an accurate projection for next year's health insurance in February when we do present the budget. We have a kickoff meeting next week with AM Appraisal, who are doing the appraisals for all of the Main Street takings or easements for the TIP project. So they're getting started ASAP. Homeowners that are along Main Street who will have easements or who we are requesting easements from will be contacted directly by the appraisal firm. So people should expect that. Just on the Main Street topic, we did have 4 outreach meetings over the last 2 weeks. We received about 30 donation forms for the easements, so that's something. So the next step is probably to mail those donation forms with a short explanation to all those homeowners to try to see if we can catch some of them, have them call us or come in and go over the process if they couldn't make any of those 4 outreach meetings. And then also continuing along with the appraisal process as well. We are still on schedule for a May 2021 start date for the Main Street TIP project. So that's good. And then just a scheduling matter, we are scheduled for Tom Scanlon to come in on February 18th to present the FY19 audit results. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, just one question on the Route 30 completion project. When are they planning on paving that?
Coordinated paving will be after school lets out in June.
Okay, so it'll be the
Yeah.
summertime. Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Madam Chair, I think that Peter had asked for an update on the fire inspector the last time.
I think we're gonna probably get that when Tim comes back.
Okay.
I'm guessing.
That's fine.
I think he probably wants to give that. I'm guessing that's why it's not on the agenda tonight.
I can give just a quick update. It's not necessarily on the fire inspector itself, but we are currently out to bid. We have an RFP out for firms to put together an assessment center to start the hiring for a full-time fire chief. Those are due back in the 28th, so I think that's next week. And, we'll get a proposal together and hopefully get a firm started on that process as soon as possible to get a chief in place, because we are carrying it in the FY21 budget right now.
Thank you.
Okay. Is that it? All right, correspondence, Peter.
Madam Chair, I've got a few correspondences here, but in light of one that Doreen wants to reply to, did you want me to read Mr. Clemens' correspondence into the record as well? So she can address that individually? Just wanted to extend that courtesy. I'll read it if you'd like.
I mean, sure.
I think it would be helpful to the public and for
know.
me to explain why we're talking about the goals meeting this week.
Okay,
So, yeah.
great. Let
Yeah,
me go
thank
through
you.
these first 3, and then
Absolutely.
that'll be my last one.
Thank
and then
you,
I'll
Peter.
let Jen take over from there. All right, so the first one, we received a few correspondences. One is from Michelle Rush, asking us about the super park, who put the super park on the agenda. I'd like to know how, with the 2.5 override on the table, we are looking at spending $34,000 in design for something we don't have the money for. Where specifically would the money be coming from? So I know we already had a long, lengthy discussion on that, but that was just one of the few correspondences that came in. The next one is from Jennifer Craig. She says, "Hello, I'm reaching out to you about flying the Donate Life flag in Grafton in celebration of National Donate Life Month in April. In support of organ and tissue donation, I am a Grafton resident and also work for the New England Organ Donor Services, which is the organ procurement organization responsible for the recovery of organs tissue for transplant at www.neds.org. Through our work, we are saving and healing thousands of lives each year. Here in Grafton, there are many families who are experiencing donation personally. They have family members who have received life-saving organ transplants or are currently waiting for their transplants. Communities all across the country fly the Donate flag, honoring those who gave the gift of life, those who received, and give hope to those who are currently waiting. In Massachusetts, several communities fly the flag at their town hall or common or other locations such as fire and police stations. I'm hoping Grafton will fly this flag this April in support of these right here in town who know firsthand how important life-saving organ donation is. The Holm family, who are Grafton residents, have shared their story. Rachel received her liver transplant many years ago. She was able to attend and graduate from Grafton High School. Her parents, Joe and Ann Holm, volunteer with our organization to help share their story and educate others. They join me in asking if Grafton will fly this flag this April. NEDS will provide the flag at no cost. It measures 3 feet by 5 feet in dimensions. I would be happy to provide more information and answer any questions you may have. Thank you, Jennifer Craig. That sounds like a wonderful idea. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I'd be in favor of flying the flag if it's our choice. Last up here, I've got, two more rather. I got one here from Dolores Charon. This is the Secretary of the Food Bank. I was hoping to offer you a tour at our well-stocked food bank. I was hoping that one or more of you would be interested. We know that there are people in town who could use our help but are unaware that a food bank even exists. We thought that you could perhaps help us but promote this great asset, as you must come into contact with lots of Grafton residents. Our food order will arrive next Friday, the 17th, so the tour could be Friday afternoon, the 17th, or Tuesday, the 21st. Monday is MLK holiday, and Hope Town Hall will not, well, the holiday and the town hall will not be open. I babysit my grandchildren. The tour would have to be after 3 p.m. Would anyone be interested? I hope so. Please just let me know. Cultivate peace wherever you may go. Peace. All right, last but not least was a letter from Mr. Clemens. Dear Madam Chair, members of the Select Board, I noticed that the Super Park is on the Select Board agenda for January 21st. The last meeting of the Super Park Building Committee was on October 3rd, 2016. I respectfully request that prior to taking a vote on the agenda item, the Board, or perhaps Ms. Thomas as Chair of the Super Park Committee, provide a summary of the background and progress of this project to update Grafton residents. Specific references as to how it was funded, what the project costs are, and whether those funds may be reappropriated for other projects or town priorities that may have arisen since 2016. Additionally, it was encouraging to see the Select Board hold a meeting to establish its set goals in August 2019. 26 goals, listed in order priority according to a collective rating of the Board, were established. If I'm correct, 3 of those goals, 3, public input on agendas, number 15, committee reports, and 24, Pledge of Allegiance, have been achieved. I commend the Board on achieving any goals they set, but I think we can agree these 3 goals were very low-hanging fruit variety. Does the Board have any update on the progress of any of its remaining goals? Have they been reviewed, discussed, or identified on the Select Board meeting agendas, particularly those that are prioritized ahead of goal number 16 related to Super Park? What mechanism does the Board have to provide Grafton residents with updates on their progress? Perhaps an ongoing agenda item goals update will provide some accountability. Sincerely, Chad Clements. That's all I have for correspondence.
Would you like to provide an update now or put it on the next agenda?
Well, why don't I do, I know we still have important agenda items to get through tonight, so why don't we do both? Why don't I give a brief update now, kind of
Okay.
answering the question, which I did respond to the email as well, but and then sort of where I'm thinking of moving forward, and then maybe we can talk about it again at a future agenda meeting as well, okay? So I brought the goals meeting idea to the Board when I was elected in May, and it was based on other communities that I have seen and worked with who have goals meetings in their communities and have for many years, and it's worked. And I work on the administrative side in municipalities, so my vision as a board member was really to be able to kind of look at what the board's goals were is in terms of policy, right? Because it's really, from the administrative side, it would be more up to, Tim and Becca's office to implement a lot of these goals too, with the direction of the board. So, for example, in Sutton where I work, and they've had goals meetings for about 15 years, the board will set a list of goals. Some of those goals can take up to a decade. I mean, and goals will come back on year after year, and things, for whatever reason, for finance reasons or, any sort of roadblocks, may not get achieved within the first year. So, but the town manager there keeps a list of goals on his desk in front of him to just kind of have this vision of what the board is looking to achieve. And so some of those are definitely low-hanging fruit. Some of those things like, putting public comments on the agenda, or putting, the Pledge of Allegiance on the agenda, or something that the board could set and do itself. Now, I reprinted the list up and looked through them, and I have to say that since we really haven't put anything on the agenda in the past 7 months, we've actually done a pretty good job as a board, looking at some of these, just because they've been important, and some of them have been things that, like the ones that I put. For example, number 6 is bike racks, and I submitted that I wanted to see additional bike racks in town. And so Tim worked with Joe Layden at the time to gave me examples of where bike racks were in town, and then looked out and gave me the cost of bike racks to put near the common, and they were $4,000. So I said, okay, we're just going to put that aside because we don't want to spend $4,000 on bike racks. So I think there have been things that have gone on behind the scenes, and from what I'm hearing is the public would like to be informed of where we are, or at least have this goals list available too, to kind of know, and maybe give suggestions to the board or who owns it. So I'll just give a couple more examples. There was an Environmental Sustainability Goals Committee, that, not to be confused with your sustainability, which is why I put environmental in the front.
Everything needs to be sustained these days.
Yes, exactly. So, and we brought that up as a board, and we talked about it, and that was actually tabled for discussion because there was questions from staff members, and Tim and I talked about that, and me attending a staff meeting. So since then, one of the other goals that was pretty low on the list was trash and recycling, that I also brought up. So in lieu of budget conversations, and knowing that we're going to have a new recycling contract next year, I am kind of working on changing the charge of this environmental committee to maybe include doing some study work for the town on what our options would be for recycling, for example. So that's not something that is ready to be brought to a board meeting, but I think, like I said, is maybe slowly moving forward. So, there's a couple things. I'm not going to go through them all, like I said, in lieu of time, but there are a couple things. Super Park was obviously on here. Ed had one, Financial Sustainability Tri-Committee. And, he's been working very hard with this Sustainability Committee. And I think, once we kind of hear the outcome of that, the discussion will move forward of a Tri-Com committee. So I also just want to say that I never envisioned, we put this in order of discussion. I never envisioned this being the order that we do things. So for example, number 1 is citizen surveys. Something else that Tim was able to look into, and we were really excited about until we got the price tag of $11,000. And then we said, we're just going to put that aside again because of cost. So I am happy to take on maybe updating, providing public information about where we are with these goals and updates, but my vision was never to have it completed in a certain order, like we have to do number 14 before we get to 16. And the other thing is, I want to make mention that some of these things move very slowly or have a long timeline, or could even be done and tabled due to cost. So I'm happy to provide information. We can talk about certainly what other goals we want to. I think it's important too to bring up, I mean, Donna wasn't elected yet, but the responsibility of the board to, maybe look at the goals that they brought forward and say, can I bring this on a future agenda? Is it even worth giving an update? That would be helpful. But again, in light of the fact that we've had a pretty busy 6 months too, that we really haven't brought some of these back up. So, and the last thing I'll say tonight is that this was our first goals meeting, and so my expectation was we're just going to sit around a table and talk about what our visions were for the community, and to grow it from there, to just establish that this is what Grafton does every year, depending on who's on the selected board, and be able to give direction to the town administrator and the assistant town administrator on what is important to the board as far as setting policies and what they should keep in mind that the board wants to see accomplished. So that's all I have right now. And we can, put it on an agenda to get into more specifics. Like I said, I'm happy to maybe give an update that we can, provide on the Grafton website, wherever it would make sense for people to be able to take a look at them and comment if necessary or they want to.
Thanks, Doreen.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So I think that document may have been shared with me when I first got on the board, but I know I haven't had any input, and the updates that you just provided are not updates that I know because I wasn't part of the discussions for those. So yes, I would like to be brought up to speed on that and probably have the opportunity to contribute to that.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
It would be nice to have it as a future agenda item.
Okay.
Can I just say this one thing too? It might be helpful to us. If there is some sort of determination that has been made about individual goals that we pursued, I know you talked to Tim about the bike racks. I think it would be helpful too, just to bring that back to the board for further discussion. Because I know exactly where you're going with the bike racks, for instance. It's not just about the convenience of having a rack for your bike. It's about getting people out of cars, right? And that's important for our traffic. It's important for the environment. And so if they are $4,000 a piece, let's have that discussion, and then let's see what CIPC thinks and where that would go on our priority list. You know what I mean? Because it's not just you that thinks that about the bike racks. There's 18,000 people in the community, and I'm sure there are thousands of people that agree with you. So I think it's incumbent upon myself too to just keep going back to those and bringing it up to the committee when we've had any movement, either good or bad, on something on the list. That way, people have faith in us that we're not just coming up with a list and leaving it. We're actually doing work behind the scenes.
No, that's a great suggestion, and I 100% agree with that. And I thank, Chad for bringing it up in the first place to, hey, whatever happened to your goals? Because, we have to get in the habit of following through, even on little things like that. I don't want to call it a little thing. It was a goal, and so I shouldn't make the determination as one board member that I think $4,000 is too much for a bike rack. I have a responsibility to put it on the agenda and bring it back to the board. So thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I also had another piece of correspondence that just didn't get addressed. It was from January 13th, and it was from Ann Renzi, and it was regarding information on the Route 30 sewer project, and it was sent to the BOS.
Was it sent to us or was it sent to?
No, it was sent to everybody here. It says BOS at Grafton. So my question is, I know sometimes, like in one case today, I had it directed to me, and I don't know whether or not it went to everybody, so that's why I brought it up tonight. But I also don't know if anybody responds to these, and I've heard occasions when you may have responded directly to the person, and I guess I'm just requesting that if that happens, that we CC all of us so that we know that it's been, answered or in some way, or if it's a Tim question, that Tim lets us know, I've called this person or I've addressed this question or something like that. I just don't know what the status of all these are. And as I said, I don't know, this one did come in. You don't recall this one?
No, there was a change in the process that was indicated to me at the last meeting that we were only going to read correspondences of those people who wish to have them read, and that's what's in this folder here, Donna.
Okay.
So I mentioned just the Mr. Clemens's letter just because I knew Doreen was ready to address that, and I thought just as a courtesy I would just preface why are we talking about this was the only reason. If there's any correspondence that I believe if the board would like to read into the record, if you just let Joanne know at the office, and then she'll assure that it gets read and it gets put into the meeting minutes, I'll be more than happy to do it.
So I'll address it, just in a little bit of a historical, we never used to get all of that correspondence.
Okay.
That's correspondence that always just came to our staff, and then they forwarded the stuff that was specifically addressed to us. But there was a change, several months ago, or probably more like 6 months ago, in which, it was requested by the board at that time that we see every correspondence. So we are still, we have not really mastered that yet about what to share here, because most of those things, like, hey, my garbage wasn't picked up today. Yeah, we don't have to respond to them. Our town staff is gonna take care of
That
them.
one specifically, I apologize that you weren't CC'd on the response email, but we actually did meet with her in person to talk about her concerns regarding Route 30, and we seem to have come to an agreement on how to move forward. So I apologize. That
Yeah, it's not more, I didn't know about, I know about not reading this into the record, but as I said, I'm just curious what
You wanna make
happens
sure
to
their
some of these.
questions are
And
answered.
yeah, and sometimes I know it's a Tim question or your question or something like that, or somebody else, but as I said, I've heard references to, well, I responded to this person, or I've seen sometimes that a response has been made, and I'm like, why are we not bringing this up for the committee to say, what's our response? When it might be, I may have a different response than what you may, and I'd like to discuss how we're going to address this kind of thing. So I understand now that it's a new process, but
Yeah.
thank you.
But certainly when Peter reads, everything into the record, if there is something that, hey, we should put that in an agenda item, we can.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, any other, that was all correspondence. All right. Next, discussion. I put this on the agenda. I just thought that it's a recap of our joint meeting with School and Finance Committee that we had last Tuesday. We got a lot of information. I want to thank town staff for putting it together. There was a lot of work that went into it, and I thought Tim did a great job explaining where we are and how we got here and our options. Basically, it was about options. Nothing was decided, except we were presented with a bunch of scenarios that we, as a board, can pick and choose. So I wanted to bring it up for discussion, just to see what people. For the main reason is I am meeting with the chair of school committee and the chair of finance committee tomorrow to discuss future agendas and future timelines. So I want to get a good idea from this board what agenda topics you might want to see the next time we meet all together. I want to get a feeling from this board about the timing, what more information you need to be able to make a decision, and all of that stuff. So Becca is prepared to answer some questions that, if we had some. So, I will open it up if, somebody has something they wanna say about it, or if anybody would like to talk about, it in general, or, I mean, I'm happy to go, usually I go last, but I'm happy to go first. It is big. Everything presented, you add it all together, it is a very large number, and I think that we have a lot of work to do to figure out what we find is important that we want to bring forward, what we think we can pull back, because I am very concerned about the taxpayer, and I want to make sure that our needs are being met, and also to make that balance. So that is, I will open, if anybody else has anything to say about it, or anything you want me to make sure to put on the next agendas.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I want to thank everyone for all the logistics of I know putting 3 boards together for a meeting is it can be challenging, but I want to appreciate everyone's time last Tuesday for their hour in going over Tim's proposal. you know, at this point in time, I mean, the numbers of what was presented are with the context without really the municipal side of the budget and what that will look like. So I know, you know, there needs to be some more information, I think, for me to kind of lend in some additional comments. But other than just recapping that, okay, last week we had a meeting, we were proposed several figures and several sets of numbers that would address level services, additional services, capital needs, municipal and school and capital needs, and so on and so forth. But you know, until I get the municipal budget, I think that'll provide a little bit more insight into what I think, you know, what I would like to see us do for our next steps. And I know you guys we have a timeline that we need to meet, so that, you know, the sooner I know we can get that budget, I think the better I could digest that. And I would make probably one minor comment about last week is, I don't know how some of the rest of you feel, but I wish I would have gotten that at least a day or two in advance. I would have liked to have really gone over that presentation myself and read it to really understand it. And that way I probably would have had, you know, based on, you know, that time, we had a limited amount of time, but I really would have liked to gotten that a little bit ahead of time. I know it's very difficult to put that information together, and I know it can be challenging, but, you know, at least a couple days, I think, would be reasonable, I think, going forward, for us to at least get an advance copy of that before we meet and discuss it. Because you know, what if we had a question that we didn't quite understand, whatever it is that Tim could have answered for us? And I know we could do it during the meeting, but if it's something technical, just understanding a component of that, what makes up that budget, I think would have been, you know, prudent. Luckily, I didn't have anything, but I just think going forward, any documents that are done, getting it at the time of the meeting, I think presents a lot of challenges. So
I agree.
I would like to propose that if we have these again, just at least a couple days before. I know asking it for a week in advance could be unreasonable, and I get that. But maybe by, you know, no later than the end of business on Monday, if we have a meeting on Tuesday. That would be reasonable.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
I agree totally. I think even if it's a draft form and you're waiting for some factors or, you know, data points to come into it, but I would have preferred to have had some ability to either ask questions ahead of time of Tim or Becca, or, you know, just to be able to read it. The other thing I'd like to request, I really would like this debt chart added to the information that we have going forward. I think it's important for people to know that our taxes are going to be, in the year, I think it's 2022, are going to be going up on average $200 for the average homeowner.
Donna, which debt chart are you talking about?
This is what I had asked Rebecca for.
Okay.
So it wasn't part. That's why I was saying I
Okay.
want it to be part of that information, and I brought it up at the meeting last week. But this is the debt rolling off, which is something I've looked at for years. When we were talking about this before in the
Right.
school and things like that. So the high school starts to reduce, but then the DPW and library kick in.
Right.
So we are right now the average taxpayer is paying about $500 for this debt service. And in 2022, it goes up to $700 for the average homeowner. So they're already expecting an increase, and I just want people to be aware of that as we go
I
forward.
agree. I think that's important too.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any? Dory?
I just, I think that we should, when you have discussions with Laura and Matt tomorrow, it's my recommendation that we put together a meeting again as soon as possible. I mean, I think that it's important to continue these discussions, see what questions they have, and, you know, I know we're not going to get the budget presented until the 11th, right, of the month? But I think that, and I don't know the answer to this question, or does this board vote whether or not we're in favor of putting an override on the ballot without the amount? Or are we waiting until we have the discussions to do that? And the reason I ask the question is because it sounds like the school committee would prefer to have the ballot question in April instead of May, so that they don't have to, you know, potentially do cuts. And so our timeline is very short. So I'm just, you know, I think that the sooner we put another TRICOM committee meeting on the agenda would be It'd be helpful, yeah.
I would also, as gently as possible, like to encourage the administration and staff to get us a budget sooner than the 11th. By our bylaw, we owe a submission of the budget to FinCom within 90 days before town meeting. The 11th is 90 days before town meeting. I know that we, in the past, have sort of pushed that deadline as much as we can. I think this year is a different animal. I think that if we're going to begin discussions with the three committees about putting an override on the ballot, we need discussions about our budget as soon as possible. In order to show, number one, the public that we're really serious about it. This year's a little bit different. Number two, to really get into the weeds. I mean, last time we talked about a budget, Bruce and I had questions, and we were sort of nudged gently that it's not really appropriate to get into it. But this year we're going to get into it on a bunch of different levels. So I would like to see that as soon as humanly possible.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I agree. I think we should, if we can get it for February 4th, that we should do it. I
Yep.
can't imagine that it's not in a format that we can review, hopefully a week earlier.
So I'm happy to show you preliminary numbers now, if you want to see them. It's not, the 400-page budget document is not complete, but I know that you don't need that to at least start having the conversation. So I do have the chart that shows what we will be proposing. Obviously, there is still wiggle room there, particularly with respect to health insurance, just because we don't know the number. So this is what it is now, but if we are able to give the full presentation on the 4th, or if we have to wait to the 11th, the numbers may be different. So I just want to give everyone that heads up, and if people want to ask specific questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. I don't know how deep you want to get into it, but right now, this is what we're looking at for FY21.
And that sewer increase, that includes the costs, does that include the cost of capital?
Sewer?
Yeah, Public Works, I'm sorry.
Oh, Public Works.
Yeah,
No,
okay,
no capital is included in that.
okay.
So I can go through just like a brief overview of each category, just so you can get a snapshot of sort of what the increases are from or decreases. Whatever you want, if you wanna, yep, go ahead.
I guess there's one part I would like to start with, and
Sure.
it's something that I know it's a kind of a sensitive topic, but in the projections that Tim had gave us, and he talked about them last Tuesday, was about cannabis funding coming into the town
Sure.
for next fiscal year to the tune of 300 and change. I'm curious as to the rationale of that number, where how feasible is that to put that into our operating budget, where it kind of relies on the same thing with the with the UPS facility. So these are projects that I know we would like to see come in, but given the state of just how fast things are moving with the Cannabis Commission, and reading recent articles over the past few days about some of the challenges they have, I'm curious as to how realistic that projection, and would it be wise to move a portion of those funds that are part of cannabis into more of one-time use monies, because as we know, those host agreements, once they get acted upon, only last for a few years, 5 years, I think,
5
tops.
years,
Right.
yep.
So at some point in time, we're gonna have to show, once cannabis does come into Grafton, we're gonna have to show that, we're gonna lose this amount of money after 5 years, and we're gonna have to make it up somewhere.
I see
So,
what you're saying.
yeah,
Yeah, it's not really operational because it's only gonna last 5 years. Is that what you're?
yeah,
what you're
right,
getting at?
exactly. I know the excise part of it, so I know the property's gonna be taxed, so I know the portion of building, it's gonna be like everything else that's taxed in Grafton as part of real property, but it's that other component that's included in that 300 and change.
Yeah, it's the host component.
Yes.
Which is the 5-year component. The 360 is inclusive of the taxes and the host component. I don't know the breakdown. I apologize. I don't know which portion of
That's
that
okay.
is for.
I just bring it up.
In terms of how realistic, it's possible that we won't see all of the revenue next year.
Okay.
Mostly because none of the proposed locations have received a CCC license as of right now. The location that's probably the furthest along is the one on Route 30. They have started renovating. We know that the sewer line will be ready by the time they are ready to go operational, but they still do not have a CCC license. We're still waiting for MJ's Market, which is the Centennial, up in the park, that location, to make application to planning board. They either just did or they're about to, so they're still in the preliminary stages. So we're hopeful that it's gonna come to fruition. If it doesn't, we will have to make mid-year budget adjustments,
Right.
definitely.
And do you think it would be wise to show what that liability would be to the town, but in the event that it does come in, it's just a windfall for the town once it happens? So I always kind of err on the side of caution when new developments come in like this about what the timing is and incorporating that into our budget projections, because let's say we see half of that, then I would like to see the budget really kind of reflect what that change would look like, because then I think that changes some of the numbers that Tim presented last week.
So are you asking to reduce the budget by half that amount? Like present the
whatever-
budget that's reduced by half that amount?
So if you
Is that-
feel that it's not going to be open in time for, July 1st of 20, will we be enough?
We don't know.
We don't know, but because there's no license by the CCC for them to operate and sell and generate revenue, maybe just drop it off altogether. And
So
that
that
way,
would mean cutting the,
well,
that
you're,
would
you're
mean
gonna,
taking money, reducing this proposed budget. That's
Yeah.
what that would mean. Because this
You're-
is a balanced budget right now as we know it.
I understand,
So-
but you're reducing it by something that doesn't exist today. I know you're anticipating it, because these facilities don't exist and they're not going to generate revenue
Right,
for us.
it is projected revenue, that's true.
Correct. So I'm wondering if we were to, instead of treating it like we did with the UPS and just kind of set that off to the side, saying, hey, if this happens, this is what the town could see. But we should probably show that to the town that, what if this doesn't happen? What if they're all delayed by a year for whatever reason?
And it's
So-
happening right now too. The CCC just had an angry meeting in Boston with a lot of people who have completed their applications 6 months ago and are still waiting.
Yeah.
And,
So I hear that, and we've read the same articles. I would probably say we would look to make an adjustment in October rather than cutting now and affecting those programs or services or staff or whatever it may be, and hoping that the funds do come through, those people are operational in July. And then in October, if it doesn't look like it's going to happen, making an adjustment in October. And that could mean raising additional monies if new growth exceeds expectation. It could mean reallocating other monies that are available through articles, et cetera. That would be my recommended approach, rather than further cutting this balanced budget now in anticipation of what we may or may not get in revenue for that particular line item.
I think for,
But it's up to this board.
yeah,
not
but I think that if the board decides to go in the direction I'm recommending, and through your recommendation of maybe making adjustments, I think it'd be good for us to know what departments would be impacted.
Where would be cut? I see what you're saying.
Before we,
Yep.
start to have that budget discussion. I think that's just having us more informed as part of that process.
I understand that. You just want to see what it would look like in the. I got that.
Exactly, thank you.
We can do that.
Madam Chair. 2 questions. I see it's a 9.9% increase on culture and recreation, so I'm curious on what that might be. And then for education, it says it's going to be 55.6% of next year's budget. I'm just wondering what that figure has been in the past.
Okay. Culture and recreation, I can give you a little bit of history with that. I'm sorry, not history. I can give you a couple of points on. So, the 9.9% increase for culture and recreation, culture and rec is less than 2% of the whole budget. I just want to make that clear. And is only looking for a $113,000 increase. It is 9.9%. So library staffing increases for staffing requirements set by the state and to pay wages within range of sister communities. So it was a request made by the library director and the board of trustees to fund adequate staffing levels at the library. Also included in this number is a part-time recreation coordinator at $25,000. The expense is seen here in that 9.9%. There is a revenue offsetting that whole expense of $25,000 through revolving funds that would be transferred from recreation program fees to the general fund. So you see it there, but we do
Okay.
get it back on the revenue side, so. And if you want additional follow-up on the library, I'm happy to ask Beth for some detail, and we can provide that at a later date. You will also get more information at the full budget presentation as well.
And then the education percentage?
Yeah, I do believe that historically it has been higher, don't quote me. I think that the increase in unclassified, because health insurance continues to go up exponentially and takes up more and more of our budget every year, that despite education getting increases over the years, they still shrink as a portion of the entire budget because of that, you know, the enormous cost of providing health insurance. But I can get the history for you.
Don, it's my recollection, it's hovering around 58% for the
That
past
sounds
couple of
right.
years.
So I don't know if you want me to run through each one. If you have questions, you know, I'm happy to answer whatever I can now. And obviously, we will give the full budget presentation as soon as we can. I do apologize. I don't think we assumed that we was supposed to come forward with the budget sooner. So
Well, we didn't direct
I
you
know,
to.
if we had received that direction, we will do everything we can to get it to you on the 4th, and if it's not the 4th, it will definitely be the 11th. So I apologize for that.
So, just in terms of, setting the next agenda, if there is anything that you go home and you think about, please let me know. And I will, when I talk to Matt and Laura, I will, make sure it's added. So, unless you have something you want to tell me now, but, all right, is there anything else anybody wants to add to that discussion? All right, then we will go to meeting minutes.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
a motion that the select board approve meeting minutes for July 2nd, 2019 as presented.
do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
Abstain?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Note the extension. Okay, August 20th.
Madam Chair, I motion that the select board approve meeting minutes for August 20, 2019 as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Right.
Aye.
All right.
Madam Chair? I abstain.
Okay. January 7th.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I motion that the select board approve the meeting minutes for January 7, 2020 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain.
Okay.
I wasn't able to connect, but I did watch it
Oh,
on,
yeah,
on,
yeah.
Oh, that's-
on
I apologize for
the
that.
TV, so, but I just assumed abstain.
All right, and then, do I have a motion to
Madam
adjourn?
Adjourn? Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great.
Have a good night.
Thank you,
you.
everybody. Good night.